watches YouTube remembers who their first creator was, and for me, it was Smosh. And throughout my entire time watching YouTube, I don't think I've seen another channel go through the same metamorphosis that they did. Smosh started out making what I would describe as 2009 sort of frat bro middle school humor, and somehow pivoted their brand towards geeky theater kid core. But how? And why did it work so well? Why am I enjoying their content more than ever?
Did somebody say meatloaf?
Smosh is probably the only YouTube channel I can think of that has been so successful for so long outside of maybe Moist Critical, which is saying a lot considering I still remember how I was first introduced to Smosh. Back in 2009, one of my neighbors brought me over to his house to show me what he described as the funniest thing he had ever seen, only to show me Food Battle circa 2009. It wasn't the most genius YouTube video I'd ever seen, it was full of scantily clad women and toilet humor, but hey, to a 12-year-old moop, it was the best thing to ever grace my eyeballs. And it's the video that got me into watching YouTube. As I grew up, Smosh was my gateway into watching other channels. Ryan Higa, Jenna Marbles, Rhett and Link, Equals 3 with Ray William Johnson. So many classic creators who did things way different than Smosh. And as I grew older, I began to relate less and less to the same sort of potty humor that I had loved. Slowly as I began to mature, I realized that Smosh was still making the same videos I enjoyed as a kid, and I was a big boy teenager now. So around 2015, I did something that never feels good. I clicked unsubscribe. And clearly I wasn't the only one. It seems like the internet had fallen out of love with Smosh around 2014 to 2015. It's not like they had been canceled or anything. It's simply that the content they were making was getting stale. People had simply outgrown Smosh. But 2 years ago, for one reason or another, I clicked on a video simply titled "Try Not to Laugh" bits that made me spit on myself. And I love spitting on myself. And it was hilarious. I was having a great time watching it, just a compilation of clips, and to my surprise, it was Smosh, but I didn't recognize anyone in it. It was completely different than the Smosh that I was familiar with. So what happened in the years I was gone? What changed so much that caused their brand to shift from this—
Alright, and I'm gonna mind control your mom to touch my prickly— Whoa, whoa, don't say it—
to this. How did Smosh rebrand itself, and how did they save their YouTube channel? Well, to do that, we need to examine Smosh's entire lifetime on YouTube, which is well over a decade at this point. From what I gather from a lot of Smosh fans, it seems like the general consensus is that there are 4 main eras of Smosh content. The old school era, which is some of their early work, where they were very much independent creators, maybe occasionally hiring a crew. There's the Defy media era, where they were acquired by a large company and now had a budget to make bigger and better productions. The Mythical era, where Smosh was purchased by Mythical, run by Rhett and Link, fellow creators. And the current modern era of Smosh, which started last year. Now, when we talk about the old school era of Smosh, it's really important to remember that there wasn't really such thing as an online influencer yet. Nowadays, the public perception is that you are one viral TikTok away from either becoming a millionaire or complete public humiliation. Sometimes both. But pre-2010, no one had really done that yet. No one had turned making videos online into a career. The closest thing we had to that was Fred the Movie in 2010, but that did not do very well. So when Ian Hecox and Anthony Padilla started making videos, they were mostly just doing it because it was fun. They were passionate about it and they wanted to make people laugh. But once they started gaining traction, they realized that, hey, this could potentially be something we make money from and do for the rest of our lives. But how? What direction do we take this in? Obviously, they wanted to move on and do bigger and better things. How do they go about doing that? Because remember, at the time, they were the trendsetters. They were pioneers of YouTube. There wasn't exactly an outline they could follow or another creator to emulate because they were the first. Their videos were what I would call geeky frat boy middle school humor, a mix of video game references, scantily clad women, and poop. But hey, that worked for them. They were the most subscribed channel on YouTube at multiple points. They truly were creating giggles for 8-year-olds. Me. I was the 8-year-old giggling. But that's not a criticism of them. They were having fun and doing what they were passionate about, and other people loved it. It clearly bled into their work, and you can tell that they had a great time running this small production, unsure of where it was going. But still, in the back of their heads, they had this question: what comes next? The internet landscape was rapidly changing. More people were taking notice, and more people were becoming creators. Something had to change. They wanted to move to do bigger and better productions, but they didn't have the resources or the budget to do so. And despite paying a small production crew out of their own pocket, it still wasn't enough. I mean, they were two early 20-year-olds trying to start a business. That's hard. That's weird. So they did something that they thought would be a good decision. They sold Smosh to Defy Media, a media conglomerate that could provide them with the resources and connections that they were so desperately searching for. And from the outside, this seemed like a good decision. Smosh once again exploded into popularity, regaining their title as the most subscribed channel on YouTube in 2013. Not only were they now partnering with huge brands like Assassin's Creed to create some of their most popular videos, but they were expanding into different mediums. They were making video games, magazines, a movie that we never talk about again. They were launching Smosh in different languages across different YouTube channels, and they continued to expand their brand, starting another channel, Smosh Games, which is still successful to this day, and even Shut Up Cartoons, where they would produce their own cartoons exclusively on YouTube. It was the best time in the world to be a Smosh fan. The views for Smosh videos skyrocketed. New people were coming in all the time. Which also brings me to the cast members. Ian and Anthony were still the faces of Smosh, but they also expanded to include other people to appear in sketches and create more content across their different channels. At first, it was just Mari Takahashi, but over time it began to include the crew from Clever Games, as well as Keith Leaks Jr., Damian Hawes, Courtney Miller, Olivia Sui, Noah Grossman, and of course, Shane Top, among many, many others. This is what a lot of people refer to as the golden age of Smosh, but unfortunately, it didn't last. Around 2015 to 2016 is also when a lot of interest in Smosh began to dwindle. But why? See, to many viewers, Smosh's new budget and resources from Defy Media were a blessing, but it seems like there was a lot going on behind the scenes. Defy Media had turned what was once just two childhood friends goofing around making funny videos that they were passionate about into a company, a corporate brand. And while that sounds great on the surface, there are a lot of restrictions that come with that. Defy had a very rigid idea of what Smosh was, what they wanted Smosh to be, and especially what kind of content the people at Smosh could produce. Any sketch or video or idea they wanted to make had to be okayed by several people at Defy Media first. Outside of that, the YouTube landscape was constantly shifting as it does, and it seemed like sketch comedy wasn't going to have a home on there anymore, which is why other brands like College Humor pivoted towards making long-form content and streaming services. Many of the new Smosh projects started under Defy Media didn't turn out too well either. Eventually they stopped producing Smosh in multiple languages, the magazine stopped after just a couple issues, the movie definitely didn't do as well as they wanted, and Shut Up Cartoons just never really found their footing. But outside of projects not doing well, it was clear that the Defy Media corporate culture was taking a toll on the cast and crew creatively. See, when someone is passionate about something, when they really have fun doing things, other people have fun watching them. One of my favorite videos online is a man trying butter chicken for the first time and having his mind blown. He's so happy, and therefore I'm happy for him. But when I see people miserable, that doesn't make me smile. That makes me sad. It's boring. I don't want to watch it. Smosh's content began to grow stale and creatively bankrupt. If they found something that worked, they would beat it into the ground and do that same thing over and over and over again. Defy Media had a tight grip on what could and couldn't be said in some of their sketches, and people began to notice. I know I did, which is why I stopped watching them in the first place. All of this reached two boiling points. The first is in June of 2017 when Anthony Padilla, one of the founders and creators of Smosh, announced that he was exiting the company. Later on, Anthony would cite that this was mostly due to Defy Media, that their corporate washing of ideas and creativity had really begun to take a toll on him mentally. Outside of that, they they treated their employees very poorly and even prevented him from joining the Screen Actors Guild. Anthony has also stated that at the time he felt taken advantage of. Him and Ian were young people who didn't really understand what they were doing when they sold Smosh and had basically gotten 0 cents from it. The second big event was when Defy Media as a whole shut down in 2018. As Ian Hecox put it,
Smosh is homeless.
And they stayed that way until they were eventually acquired by Mythical. I want to be clear, Mythical's acquisition of Smosh is definitely a turning point in their branding and content, but it's not like this happened overnight. Because while parting with Defy Media was definitely for the best, it wasn't without its pain points. Besides Anthony, many of Smosh's cast and crew had exited over the years, and while some would make occasional appearances, not all of them would stay. Smosh also didn't have the budget and resources they previously had to make some of these larger productions, so they had to think on their feet. They had to stop and examine where Smosh had come from, what Smosh currently was, and more importantly, where they wanted Smosh to go, and how they would get there. And eventually, they came to the correct realization that they still had their most valuable product themselves. Now, that sounds cheesy, and it definitely is, don't get me wrong, just because you're lactose intolerant. Over the next half a decade, Smosh's brand began to pivot away from being Smosh, the media company, to being Smosh, the group of comedians and creators who were behind everything. This mostly happened through their secondary channel, Smosh Pit. Here, they developed videos that were not only more in line with the current YouTube algorithm and landscape, but more focused on the comedians trying to make each other laugh, and series that highlighted their personalities and relationships. Which sounds like a far cry from the previous pre-written sketches that they had been known for, but not necessarily. They still had time for wacky characters, they were just delivered to their audiences in a new, improvisational, and unscripted way. For example, probably the most well-known Smosh character currently is The Chosen, whose first appearance was in a poker video on Smosh Games. They started producing shows like Try Not to Laugh, You Posted That, Two Truths and a Lie, Eat It and Eat It, all of which were vehicles to prove one simple fact: comedians can be pretty funny. It's almost like when you give creative people creative freedom, they can be creative. Truly riveting things. This is when Smosh began to recapture some of that old magic that intrigued so many people, although it was very different. But at its core, you were watching creative people create things that they loved, and it was about them. You didn't love Smosh because it was a brand, you loved Smosh because of the people in it. In 2009, I loved it because it was Ian and Anthony creating stuff. I liked them as people. But now, I love this entire cast and crew, the Smosh family. It also helped that there was no large brand corporate washing their jokes. Seriously, they make so many 9/11 jokes that never would have flown under a company. It seemed like the Smosh cast and crew were passionate about the videos they were creating, and most importantly, having fun. And viewers picked up on that. Under Mythical, Smosh was creating high quality content that was really freaking funny and at a very fast rate. Smosh noticed that they were doing something well and decided to keep doing it. They brought in new cast members, they started new shows, and it was being received so well. They could do something as simple as read Reddit stories for an hour and people would eat it up because they loved the people doing it. They were beginning to once again grow a very loyal and supportive fan base, but something was still missing. Their former core audience would not give them another chance. I was part of that. I'm gonna be honest, I probably never would have clicked on this compilation if I had seen Smosh in the title. The issue with Smosh becoming such a well-known name on YouTube is that most people had already made up their minds on whether or not they liked it. They had no way of knowing just how much Smosh had changed. They were probably just never gonna give it a chance again. Be honest, if you've unsubscribed from someone, how likely are you to subscribe to them again? I don't think I've done that for any other channel but Smosh. If only there was some massive catalyst that would bring back all those nostalgic old fans. Oh yeah! In 2023, Anthony Padilla and Ian Hecox made an announcement that they had purchased Smosh back from Mythical Entertainment on very good terms. Not only would Anthony Padilla be returning to the channel to create classic Smosh sketches that a lot of old fans were craving, but all the current content and shows that people loved would still be here to stay and that he would be participating in. Over the next couple weeks, Anthony made the rounds, appearing in almost every show that Smosh produced, and people watched. Viewership during the month Anthony Padilla joined back with Smosh skyrocketed and peaked. But not just that, a lot of the people who came to see what was going on stuck around. People were able to expose themselves to the new era of Smosh, and they loved it. In the months leading up to Ian and Anthony making their announcement, Smosh Pit's views sat at around 10 million per month, which is by no means a small number, but in the 10 months after they made the purchase, Smosh Pit views averaged 40 million. Now, obviously, I don't have a behind the scenes look at Smosh or am able to go through their financials to tell you that it's doing well, but I have to believe this much of an increase in viewership has gotta be a little easy on the wallet. As a fan, I can definitely say I adore the content that is coming out of Smosh. It's very clear that they're all talented and passionate and get along with each other. So when we ask how Smosh saved their brand, it's simple. They became human again. They no longer had a parent company dictating what kind of content they could and couldn't make and stifling their creativity. Instead, they boiled down what worked to its simplest form, a group of people creating things that make them laugh, that they're creative about, and that they have fun doing it. The whole point of making videos in the first place was never to do it as a job, but do something for fun. And they decided to build upon that and create what Smosh is now. And thank goodness for that. All I can really say is that I'm so excited for the future of Smosh and whatever surprises they have in store. Have a nice damn rest of your day.
Did somebody say meatloaf?